Thanks everyone for joining us today. We are really excited to present some early results of our Certified Peer Specialist Career Outcome Study. So we have today myself and Morgan, and we'll introduce ourselves a little bit later on, but let's get started. Okay, so we are gathered here today to, first of all, share findings with the people who are participating in the study, and also stakeholders who have helped us along the way, the people in the states and in peer and consumer-run organizations in those states. We really appreciate all of your help in getting as far as we have, and look forward to working with you for the next couple of years on this. So in addition to us sharing some data with you, and our thoughts about it, this is an opportunity for questions and input. You can enter your questions in the chat, so just so everyone knows, because people are participants in our research, the chat is anonymous, but you can be asking questions throughout, and then the moderator will let Morgan and I know at the end, and we'll answer questions then. And then the other purpose of this is that we are hoping that everybody who participated last year in the survey will complete this year's survey, which will be launching sometime between March and September, depending on when you completed your survey last year. So thanks to our funders at NIDLR and to our partnerships with Temple University and University of Illinois at Chicago. So I'm Laysha Ostrow. I'm the principal investigator on the study. I am a survivor researcher. In addition to being a researcher, I have my own personal experiences in the mental health and disability systems. Although I have not worked as a peer supporter, a lot of my research over the years has been on peer support and on peer-run organizations, and I'm getting more interested now in labor issues. So that's kind of the motivation for this study. I'll let Morgan introduce herself.
I'm Morgan. You've probably heard from me either through email or by phone call, and I am a research coordinator for Live and Learn and the lead on this study. I lead a lot of the recruitment and everything, and so I also have lived experience. I served as a peer support counselor at a peer respite here in California, and then joined research because that's, I think, more where my calling is.
So then we also have other members of the team that you will be hearing from through the recruitment process. Becca Livermore is a research assistant with Live and Learn. Mallory Duarte just joined us as an administrative assistant. She'll be coordinating some of the recruitment this year, so you'll probably be hearing from her. And then Matt Hubbard, who was with us last year, you might have had some contact with him regarding your gift cards. And then our dog, Woogie, who is essential to operations. Mark Salzer and Judith Cook, who are co-investigators on the study with me. And Liz Science and is helping with qualitative interviews. So if you've been participating in the qualitative interviews, you've probably met her. And Jane Burke-Miller, who is our data analyst, who prepared a lot of this data for us. So thank you to all of these people. So this is an independent peer-led research study. So we're not connected to any state or certification body. I think there's been some confusion about that. So there's no penalty to your certification for not participating in the study or in this webinar today. We don't have any say over your certification. At the same time, we're taking a more objective view of your experiences at work and really trying to promote the direct experience of people who've been certified as a peer specialist and feed that information back to the states and the certification bodies. So we're not offering CEUs today, but we can provide a certificate of attendance if you email us and ask for it. I know some people have already done that. This webinar will be recorded and available on our website, our study website, peerspecialist.net within the week. And I also just wanted to make some comments about the data. So as with any study, these kind of data are based on averages. So you might see something that doesn't reflect your experience or that contradicts some of the quotes we'll be sharing from participants because it's all average. But we are really trying to understand how complex the range of experiences are, and there's a lot of diversity in those. So these results are preliminary. They might change. I mean, we really have just started looking at the data, so we don't have any really hard and fast conclusions yet. And For those who don't know, that is a monarch butterfly chrysalis. So we're on the Central Coast here in California. That actually grew in my backyard this year and hopefully launched into a butterfly. I'm not really sure. Hopefully I have better follow-up for the study than I do with my monarch chrysalises. So this study is a study of people who have recently been certified as a peer specialist. That includes people who are working in peer support, who are working in other occupations, either alongside a peer support job or in a different occupation altogether, or who are not working right now. And it's really important that we have representation from people who are not working right now. And you'll see in the data that we do have some of that, but I wanted to emphasize that those experiences of getting certified and not working for whatever reason are really critical to understanding the certification process. So through the study, we are trying to understand your employment challenges and barriers to working, identify better work opportunities. And an important thing about this study is staying connected with you over time to see how things change in your lives. So really the theory of the study is looking from the point of certification, what were the jobs that people, or the work experiences that people had before, and then do those change after certification. So sort of thinking of certification, much like higher education, like, is this a launching point for careers, or does it really have no impact, or what kind of impact does it have? So like I said, we're looking to see what work is like after certification and how it's changed. We are also going to be looking at some other contextual data from the Bureau of Labor Statistics. So obviously right now there's a really high unemployment rate in the United States. So we want to know, are the employment rates and experiences of certified peer specialists, related to the local job market, or are they kind of independent of that context? Are they worse off? People with psychiatric histories are often worse off in the labor market, even if other people are doing well. We're one of those last groups to really have full employment. And then the last thing is, how does certification change peer specialist social, emotional, and financial situation? So if you took the survey, I'm hoping this is contextualizing some of those questions for you and why they're important. So we ended up working with 4 states, Pennsylvania, where a plurality of the participants are from, North Carolina, Texas, and Oregon. So the important thing about these states and choosing them was geographic diversity. So we wanted samples from around the country. The other part of that was looking at states that were likely to have a lot of people that would be eligible to participate. So based on the number of people who were certified in 2019. And then the willingness of the states to share information. So for some of the states that we wanted to work with that met these other criteria, they felt that the sharing contact information with our research team of peer specialists would be violating their privacy. So we weren't able to work with them. Although I obviously respect that decision. So there was, as with everything, there were complications and barriers. So getting contact information and making sure that we respect people's privacy has been really important. There was an issue of grandparenting that we weren't aware of when we started the study. So in some of the states like Pennsylvania, there was a massive dump of new certifications that were not actually new certifications. So we kind of had to pivot around that. And I know, especially for people in Pennsylvania, there was a lot of confusion in the beginning, and we really appreciate you bearing with us. Multiple certifications, so differentiating between the different kinds of mental health peer supports, but certification, substance use, other things like that led to some confusion. And then COVID-19, which is just a complication and a barrier for everything these days.
So we're going to launch into the data now, and I just want to send out a reminder that if you have questions as we go, please feel free to put them in the chat. Some of this will be pretty data heavy, so it's better if they come up, just get them out right there in the moment so that you don't forget them. But so for those of you who did take the survey, you probably recall one of the first questions we asked was about your reason for getting involved in peer support and becoming certified. Our reason for that is just, we want to know why you're here. Why are you doing this? And so the most common reason in our sample was 34% of individuals said they wanted to make meaning of their own suffering or trauma while helping reduce that suffering for others, which, for peer support, that makes sense. And then again, there's a theme that comes in here that is more along the lines of what peer support really is. So 24% said being valued for their lived experience, which obviously peer support is all about that. 20% again with this supporting others, of giving back and helping others, especially because peer support helped them. 8% said they appreciated the emphasis on recovery language that peer support has. 3% said there was an ability to disclose your mental history. And then we had an other category that had 11% of individuals. And then for becoming certified, 30% of our sample said that someone encouraged them to get certified. This could have been a counselor, you know, a case manager, a friend, maybe their own peer supporter. And then 24% said they wanted to use this as a stepping stone to more education or jobs. 20% said certification was required by their employer. 6% said being professionally recognized, or they wanted to be professionally recognized like other social practitioners. And then 5% said eligibility for higher pay and education. And then that, again, category of 14% of other. So those other categories, we often ask you to specify, but also it's really important that, because we also include open-ended questions where you can fill in as much or as little as you would like to. And those just come in handy to provide context to the data, because there's only so much that we can ask you. We already got feedback of how long this last survey was. So there's only so much we can ask you before you lose interest or we don't get the full story. So I really encourage you guys, as you fill out future surveys, either with us or anybody, that if there's an extra space there and there's something that we're not getting to and asking you, please tell us what you want us to know. So these are some quotes from those areas. In my area, certified peer support specialists during this addiction crisis with heroin and fentanyl deaths are being paid more than those with masters in mental health backgrounds and therapists. People want to talk to peers. Mental health wants to tell their stories and make a decent living. Peer agencies pay more. And then another one is, it allowed me, a person thriving in recovery but lacking in formal education, to have a job that wasn't in a restaurant while still being of service. And then one final one is, when I went to college for psychology, I wanted to become either a therapist or a psychiatrist to help others with mental health issues like I go through every day. Unfortunately, my mental health issues at the time, financial issues, stopped me from achieving my goal. Thank goodness for my case manager putting me in touch with the CPS program, and that is where I learned I could make a difference. So again, just things that we couldn't get from that question we asked in the last slide. This really helps fill in those gaps. So as Laysha mentioned, we recruited from 4 states over about an 8-month period. And from that, we ended up with 682 participants. Most of those completed the survey in full, but we did have a handful that got through a certain number of questions, and we still hope we have enough on this data set to move on and hope that they will participate in the future. From that, we wanted to look at further, were these people working or not working? So we did find that we're 154 people that weren't currently working and 492 that did currently have a working paid position. And then a little bit further, we divided that into were these non-CPS jobs, CPS jobs. So as you can see, 31% of the people currently working were working in a non-CPS job. There was a smaller category of positions that required training but not certification, and that was only 3%. And then a good portion, 66% of those working were working in CPS jobs. I do want to take one moment just to point out these little missing boxes over here. So the top one of 36, we had 36 people that did not either get to the employment questions or skip them completely. So we have no idea of their working status. And then we had an additional 53 that were missing work details. Again, we recognize that the work history that we asked for was pretty extensive, especially if you had multiple jobs. But just to point out, the reason why we do that is because we're hoping to be able to use that information for different and more complicated and complex analysis. And if we don't have that information starting off, we can't do that later analysis. So it's really important that for future surveys, please fill them out as completely as possible. We can offer support, which I can just discuss later, but we can help you fill them out.
Yeah, and I'll just say that I'm not encouraging anybody to skip any parts of the survey, but the employment questions are really critical to this study, because this is a study about whether certification is helping people get jobs and what kind of jobs. So like, this is the key. If you're going to do anything, you know, do this, but do all of it.
And then on top of asking about employment, we were also curious to hear from everyone about what other productive activities they were participating in, because I mean, hopefully healthily wise, we're not all engrossed in work. So hopefully you have some things outside. And so we asked about activities such as parenting, caregiving, volunteering, going to school or taking courses, looking for work, or taking time off of work to for self-care reasons or for health reasons. And so for the most common for currently engaged, parenting and caregiving was at 40% and 31%. Not surprising. I mean, we are in a pandemic, so a lot of people are probably teaching their kids at home. So totally understandable. And then for engaged in the past 12 months, we see these other categories of 51%, almost or more than half of participants took off time for work at some point, either for self-care or health. 36% were volunteering, 33% were taking courses or going to school, and 31% were looking for work. And so again, this just helps add context to, you know, what else are you doing and other ways that you could be using your certification outside of work. So we want to introduce who are these 682 participants. We were pleased that a good portion of the sample identified as something other than white for their race. And then 10% did identify ethnically as Latinx. And so I will say that we do believe that this is fairly representative of the people that are CPS in the states that we're working with.
Yeah, and I'll just say that looking at other studies of peer specialists, this is one of the more diverse samples in terms of race or ethnicity. So just really appreciate everyone for taking the time to participate, and hoping that you complete the survey this year as well, so we can keep up this diversity in the sample.
Exactly. And then again, moving on to gender, we, while, you know, a majority of our participants did identify as male and female, and about 2/3 of that was female. And then the age range we had as young as 21 and as old as 83, with an average of 47 years. And so kind of as Laysha mentioned on the last slide, you know, these smaller groups, it's very important they remain represented. And so if you do personally belong in one of these smaller groups, whether it's in gender or race, ethnicity, or these like lower and higher bounds of age range, just we really do hope that you'll continue to participate and help represent people, other CPS like you. And then for education, a good majority of the sample had completed some kind of education outside of or after receiving their high school diploma or GED. Some college is the largest at 38% of people had completed some college. And I just want to explain what that is. It just means that maybe you took a couple courses or something outside of high school or after high school, but either didn't take enough or never applied for an associate's or bachelor's degree. And then we asked about
I just want to say something about the education, that we were kind of wondering if, as part of certification in some of the states, that maybe people had earned college credit, and some college block is because of that. So if anyone knows, if you get college credit for your training and certification, please let us know.
Yeah, or even your CEUs. We know that you have to do those as well. So for public benefits, a little bit less than half of the sample was not receiving any kind of benefits, but we do see that 20% of individuals were receiving some kind of public assistance, whether that was SNAP benefits or housing assistance, and then 16% were receiving SSDI. And then just a couple more quotes. This kind of helps fill in some context on financial well-being, and we actually have a scale in the survey that we ask about financial well-being. We're not reporting that here, but it will be in future reports and whatnot. But this quote says, "The magic figure of $15 per hour being a living wage is only true if that's net income, and then it's a struggle. But there are rewards beyond income in this field." And then kind of just that trajectory that Laysha was talking about, that this can be a stepping stone for other things in life. I wanted an introduction into the field of substance abuse. Taking the peer support course gave me the confidence to go back to college and direction for my degree. Okay, so launching into some of the employment stuff that we've been discussing. while we're talking about this, this is in the past 12 months in relation to the survey. So not the past 12 months as in like today back, but at the time of the survey, there were 586 participants reported holding at least one job in the past 12 months. 62% of that 586 had at least one job or had one job. 36% had 2 or 3 jobs, and then the remaining 2% had more than 3 jobs, which is again where the survey got lengthy for some people. So combining those all together, that left us with 819 reported jobs, which we again divided into CPS and non-CPS. And I just want to clarify here that what we mean when we say CPS related is the job either required certification or the training. And then the non-CPS jobs are positions maybe like in food preparation or industry, retail that doesn't require certification. And then again, we further divided those down. And so 47% of the 819 jobs were requiring certification. That smaller percentage, those 3% that required just the training. And then about 50% were non-CPS jobs. And again, this isn't saying that 50% of people weren't working non-CPS jobs. This is just specific to the jobs. People could have held multiple jobs. And so, yeah. And then, so the reason we divide it up this way is because we want to know, are there differences among these positions? So we were curious about time working and benefits. And so when we look at full-time, it was more likely that the certified jobs and the job training, or the jobs that required training were full-time positions. So what this means is 60% of the CPS jobs were full-time. And then on the same note, the CPS certified, or the jobs requiring certification required, or more often offered benefits. So we see that 66% offered paid time off and 49% offered health insurance. And then on the opposite end, of course, it makes sense that that if this is what we're seeing for this part, that the non-CPS jobs, 54%, which was higher than the others, did not offer any benefits. And just to speak to this, that we recognize this might not be overall representative of all positions, but you know, the reason we could be seeing this is that the non-CPS jobs might be part-time, and part-time positions often don't offer benefits. So what we did is we took the information you gave us, and part of what we asked you was your job title. And we took those job titles and we organized them into these occupational categories that were defined by the Bureau of Labor Statistics. The reason we're doing that is because going through and trying to identify the difference between 819 jobs can be really overwhelming. So we were able to, I think it was 21, so a little bit less than 24 job categories. And so the main, or the 2 types of job categories for all CPS jobs, they were either classified in community and social service or management if they were, you know, a peer supervisor. And then those other job categories really fall in for the non-CPS jobs. And so these are the top 10 that we saw. Again, you know, that community and social services. So even if you weren't working as a job that required you to be certified, we still see a good portion of you working in positions of community support. So 24%, 13% of those jobs were in office or administrative roles, 9% food preparation and serving, 8% in transportation, 6% in the categories of education, sales and management, 5% in both healthcare practitioners and healthcare support, and then 4% in that personal care and service. So we're kind of hoping to look at these, and again, like with the last slide, look at the differences between the categories and what it means.
Yeah, it is interesting, like even if, like you said, people are not working a job that requires certification, or not even in that community and social service category that encapsulates peer support positions as of now. A lot of these other jobs are also still in healthcare and social support and social services, like even education. And then I know, I'm not sure where this is at, I know there had been an effort to create a Bureau of Labor Statistics job category for peer specialists. I would like an update on that. That would certainly make our job easier in terms of categorizing the data. And I think it would be important for understanding the peer specialist job even further in larger data sets.
Right. So yeah, like Laysha was mentioning, as we were coding this, you know, there was no like for a lot of you, you do have peer support jobs. There was no going, oh, check peer support. No, we had to categorize it as something else. So, and again, just a reminder, as we are going through this, well, one reminder, please feel free to send questions as we go, but also we recognize that while some of this data might make it sound like peer support jobs are the best thing to happen or super positive, we recognize that's not everybody's experience and reality. And so it's important that if you're listening to us now, or even if you filled out the survey and you're like, God, I didn't have a great experience with the certification or, you know, finding work, that we hear about that too. And so this is an example here. I can't afford to get a job in this field. Pay is too low and organizations don't have enough funding to offer decent health insurance packages. I would inevitably relapse into crisis if I could not afford regular therapy. It's honestly very upsetting that a job specifically created for people in recovery from mental health conditions is unable to provide appropriate health care benefits. And I forgot to mention this earlier, but something that is unique about our study is that we are asking to hear from everyone who is certified. So the majority of research that exists now only asks about or only recruits people who are working as CPS and in a job that requires certification, which misses all these other individuals who maybe can't find work in CPS or decided they don't want to work in CPS. So that's something that is very unique about our study. So if you fall into that group, please, we still hope to hear from you and kind of learn what you're going through.
Yeah, and I think we're going to be adding a question this year for people who aren't working in a peer specialist job to know why that is. Were there specific barriers? You know, I think we've heard from some people like that they were required to have a car to get a job, or, you know, issues like this, like people can't afford to work in those jobs, or those jobs just not available, or did you decide you wanted to do something else? So that'll be something that's new on the survey this year.
Yes. So disclosure. So, I mean, intuitively, we all know that a peer support role, you identify as a peer, and we all know what that means. And so, what we specifically wanted to ask was, in your workplace, are you comfortable disclosing your personal experience of mental challenges, or mental health challenges to work colleagues? So, you know, obviously they probably know your title, but do you disclose with them what you're going through or why you are a peer? So not surprisingly, in jobs not requiring personal experience, very few, select 16% of people said that they do disclose. But I will say that even in jobs that required personal experience, I think we were a little surprised that it was as low as 47%. But again, that point is that it is work colleagues. So of course you're probably disclosing with the people you work with, like directly, but maybe not to the whole team. And then the other option was only on a case-by-case basis. So it doesn't really matter about the work place, but just, you know, you choose when you share. And that was 39% of people said that that's how they go about it.
Yeah, and this is another opportunity that you could provide comments as to what the challenges with disclosing are, even in a peer support job. So we would definitely be interested in getting more context around how those decisions are made, or what that experience is like.
Right, and we discuss pretty soon about negative experiences, and so this could definitely be part of that. So we were curious about, are CPS jobs lasting longer? Are they offering more of a career placement? And, you know, we've talked to a couple people in the interviews that have said, like, I will be in this job until I retire, which is awesome. So we're just curious, what does the data say about that? And so we had a criteria that we looked at the jobs that were longer than 12 months, because that kind of helps narrow down and got rid of a couple outliers that were throwing it. But when we did that, we did see that CPS jobs, or jobs requiring certification, 66% lasted longer than, or are lasting longer than other positions. And so for jobs that have lasted for at least 12 months, CPS have been at their jobs longer. And then we wanted to include this. There wasn't anything, the differences that we see here, they're not significantly statistically significant, but we did want to at least show this so you guys can all see that for the jobs that did end, we wanted to show you the reasons for their ending. And the reason why is because there's a very common stereotype that individuals that struggle with mental health are often fired from positions, when that's actually the lowest reason we saw in our survey for the jobs that had ended. The good majority of jobs had ended voluntarily. That was 66%. Laysha, did you want to?
Oh, yeah, I was just gonna say that that people report, they voluntarily quit. I think it can be more complex than that. I think, some people are put in a position where it's just not tenable to stay at their job, either because they're being denied accommodations or they can't make a living, or, we're gonna, like Morgan said, we're gonna talk about the specific negative experiences at work that people have had that might drive them to quit their jobs. So we're also, I think hoping to learn more about why people have quit. And then in terms of the COVID numbers, we didn't have this as a category this year because we didn't know it was going to happen. But we will be, I think, adding a question specifically about people quitting or losing their jobs because of COVID going forward.
This data is actually from people using that other and writing in, like, due to COVID. And like Laysha said, we had no idea. I think we launched the survey as California shut down. So that was the day we launched the survey. So we had no idea COVID was going to be a thing, but we will have questions relating to it moving forward. And then, so as we've mentioned before, the beginning grandparenting or grandfathering kind of took us by shock and was kind of a challenge at the beginning, but we now recognize it's kind of a silver lining of now we have this amount of data that we can look at and see, are there differences among people who were certified before 2019 or not. So we did want to look and see about people working at CPS, and in general, I mean, if you recall from earlier, 66% of people were working in a CPS job. So there's a good portion of our sample that are working at CPS. But more so, this difference we see between the 43% and the 61% is statistically significant. And what that means is that the longer you've been certified, the more likely you are to be working a CPS job. So we want to put this in here as a little token of hope that this last year was complicated and hard because of COVID, and you might not have found a CPS job right after you got certified. The data says that it's okay. You'll hopefully find something soon. And then, as we mentioned, we asked about negative work experiences. So we actually adapted this specific measure from the Kessler study or the survey. And so there's 13 options, but these are the top ones that we observed. And so 52% of our samples said that they've experienced hearing offensive comments about people with lived experience. 51% said they've experienced getting paid less than others doing a similar job. 45% has said that they've had negative attitudes toward them on part of their coworkers. Another 45%, or maybe some of the same, but 45% said they did not receive enough education or training to do their job. 44 said negative attitudes from the supervisor, 43 lack of job counseling and mentoring, and then 37% of individuals were concerned about losing their government assistance or benefits. So the way that we adapted it is we wanted to break it down by these groups. And so the blue bars are both peer support and non-peer support jobs. So it kind of blankets all jobs. The orange is non-peer support jobs only. And the dark purple is the specifically jobs that are in peer support. And so for the top for both peer and non-peer support jobs, we see it's 29% of individuals saying that in both positions, they've heard offensive comments about people with lived experience. So as we were talking, there's many reasons to leave a job, and this could obviously lead someone to end a job. And then for non-peer support jobs only, the higher observed were negative attitudes on part of the coworkers or supervisor at 19% for each. And then for peer support only, it was 17% of people in peer support jobs have reported getting paid less than others in a job similar to you. Job satisfaction was a really short scale, but what we found from that information or that data so far is that those currently working in CPS jobs did have significantly higher satisfaction with their jobs than those working in non-CPS jobs. And some quotes to kind of, again, back that up and give context. Peer support is powerful. To support others in recovery and assist in achieving goals they believed they couldn't achieve is so inspiring. This field of work is exactly where I need to be. I feel like I receive as much as I give. The success my individuals experience is as much of a reward for me as it is for them. And then one last one is to touch a life in a positive way is very rewarding.
Yeah, so I think, we maybe see higher satisfaction from the CPS jobs for these reasons that these people wrote in, but we are definitely going to be getting into this data to see whether there are other factors that might contribute to this higher satisfaction. So it could be that it's just the fact of having a full-time job, or getting paid more, having more benefits, or something like that, that drives this higher satisfaction. Actually really has nothing to do with it being a job that requires certification. So that's something we'll be looking into the data for and reporting more on later.
And I know I've heard from a few individuals that said that they want to work as a CPS, but again, like Laysha was mentioning, there's factors that prevent that, whether it's the requirements for the job, needing to be able to have a car, or that they need part-time work because maybe they're receiving benefits and they don't want to lose those. So a lot to still dig into this, but this is the early finding.
So we use a couple scales to ask people about their experiences at work. So one of those was about the work environment. So that addresses things like the workload, how much work people are assigned, and whether it's too much work, having control over their job, being able to make proactive choices about what they do at work, feeling rewarded for work, a sense of community at their workplace, whether the employer has fair rules or not, and then whether the organization they work for shares their values. And then we had some questions specifically regarding the experience of burnout, which obviously is a very hot topic right now, especially for people who work in healthcare, but I think probably for all of us. So that survey asked about exhaustion, cynicism, so feeling like, having a bad attitude about work, that it's really not doing anything. And then professionalism, which is related to like professional efficacy. So feeling like you have the ability in your job to make a difference in the world, or to make a difference in your work. So we found in the blue bars that you see highlighted, community, fairness, values, exhaustion, and cynicism, that these were overall better for people working in CPS jobs. So this is an area we're going to be exploring more as well, kind of like satisfaction, to see, what is it that's making burnout or making the work environment better in these ways, and not in other ways for people working at CPS jobs, and what is that really driven by? It could be, again, like that they're full-time jobs, that they're getting paid differently, or that they have different negative experiences of work and things like that.
Just to clarify, better burnout means less likely that they are experiencing burnout, just because, yeah.
Yeah,
but
blue bars are better in the regular use of the word, not higher.
Right. But I can speak to that myself. Like, I worked as a peer supporter, as I mentioned, and I definitely feel like I experienced burnout in that job. So it will be interesting to kind of dive deeper into this analysis and kind of see, like Laysha said, what are the characteristics that are making the CPS jobs less likely to feel burnt out.
Yeah, and can we just go back to it a second? So yeah, I mean, thinking about Morgan's experience specifically, which I think a lot of people have, is that, I think a lot of times if you have a psychiatric disability, that the peer support job category has really opened up a lot of employment opportunities for people like us, but at the same time, like, has become kind of a funnel for employment, where not everyone who has lived experience is going to want to work in a peer support job, but that might be the best opportunity. As some people have, we've seen some of the results here that people have said, I use it as a stepping stone to get more education. So, somebody like Morgan might be less burned out working in research for the time being than working in peer support, because it's a better fit. So we asked everyone, regardless of whether they were working at the time of the survey or not, how likely they were to be holding a paying job next year. So 86% of the sample said that they strongly agreed that they saw themselves holding a paying job in the next year. So that's encouraging. We did see a difference by whether people who were working or not. So people who were not working at that time were less optimistic. So they were less likely to strongly agree that they saw themselves holding a paying job in the next year. So I think that's important. And work motivation has been shown to be correlated with actually working in the future. So feeling like you're going to work suggests that you will be working in the future. So self-employment is something that I'm really interested in, and Live and Learn is doing other work around that right now. So 10% of our sample is actually currently self-employed, and 15% were engaged in some kind of business development. So the types of businesses that people were either working in or were planning on starting, a lot of people were having independent peer support businesses. So working as a sole practitioner on your own, or starting a nonprofit organization. People doing consulting and training, a lot of that also in mental health or peer support. But then we have all these people having other kinds of businesses outside of the mental health field. So people having real estate businesses, writing, art and design, janitorial, hairstyling, people working in the gig economy, as Uber drivers or DoorDash, people with landscaping businesses. And when we asked people their reasons for self-employment, 50% of the people said that it was important to them to have a source of income or financial self-sufficiency. So some of these businesses might be on the side of their peer support job or another occupation. And some people are probably looking to get into it full time. 25% said that they wanted more freedom and control over their work through self-employment. 22% wanted to contribute a new idea or innovation. So like starting a peer support business, I think that would fall into a new idea or innovation, since it has not been something that we have seen a lot of, but I think are increasingly seeing that. And having more freedom and control over their schedule. This is important because other research has shown that the most frequently requested disability accommodation by people with psychiatric disabilities is having a flexible schedule.
Yeah, I just want to say for anybody watching either now or the recording later, if you fall into this group of individuals that are self-employed, as Laysha mentioned, Live and Learn does a lot of other research. We have another project going right now on self-employment. And so if you are interested in, learning more about that, you can check our website or just reach out to us and we can get you connected and get you into another study as well.
So our next steps, we will be working on papers and other presentations, getting into some of the data as we've described. So I think the first priority is going to be looking at what are kind of the general pros and cons of CPS jobs versus other jobs. So some of that data that we've looked at now in terms of pay and benefits and hours. Looking at certifications, working in peer support and how that impacts quality of life. We have some other scales that we didn't present here on self-efficacy and financial status. Looking more at the data on the work environment and burnout, what are contributing to those. Again, self-employment and how that might be contributing to career and financial freedom for peer specialists. Financial stress. We just started analysis on the financial stress measure. We did find so far that overall, the average score for the peer specialists in our study was lower than the averages reported by the Consumer Financial Protection Bureau, but that was actually a couple of years ago that they reported it. So it could be due to COVID or could be due to the sample of our study. But again, that's why it's important to kind of get into the data and look at a lot of different factors. And then it's really important to us to help people who are not working and want to work, find work or engage in other meaningful activities. Do you want to say something about the qualitative interviews, Morgan?
Oh, sure. So some of you may have been invited to our qualitative interviews. It's just an additional part of the study. And so far, they've been super interesting. I mean, again, as I mentioned earlier, there's only so much we can ask you in the survey. And so this definitely helps add another layer of understanding. And we ask, questions around the pandemic as well and stuff. And so I have to say, we're almost at the end of it. And I feel like I have not heard one story that is the same. So that's really cool to be part of that as well.
And you can see some of the data we presented today is already posted on our website, peerspecialist.net, and we will be posting updates there. And one thing that's really interesting is we have a lot of the quotes from participants posted there. So if you want to kind of understand people's first person representation of their experience, you should definitely check that out.
So future involvement, the next steps for us, the first and foremost, some housekeeping that I want to take care of is just asking if you received your $10 e-gift card. You don't have to send in the chat here, but just check your inbox if you don't recall receiving it or if you know you didn't receive it. We had two options that it would have been coming from. If you wanted Amazon, it'd be from Amazon. If it was any of the numerous other options, it would have been from giftcards.com. So feel free to search your inbox if, again, you don't think that you received it. And if you can't find it or you're still not sure, please feel free to email us, call us. Our contact will be at the end, and let us know so that we can either help you locate it or like we can tell you, oh, it should have been received on this date, or we can resend it if all else fails.
Yeah, and this year, sorry, I just want to say something about the
Right.
incentives this year. So we had like 9 options through giftcards.com for people to get an incentive. We're going to have to narrow it down this year, but we still will try to provide different options, but in a way that makes it more clear that you have received your incentives.
And the important part of that is just that you are doing us a big service by filling out these surveys. It's time that you could be using it for other things. And so we really want to say that we appreciate you. And so that $10 e-gift card is the way that we do that. And so as we mentioned, the next survey will be starting soon, which is very exciting. The way that it's going to look is in February. So next month, we will be sending through email, we will be sending an address confirmation. So for many of you, we do have your physical address on file. For some of you, we don't. So we will be sending an email that says, hey, can you verify this and say if you still live here or not, or update it or provide it if we don't have it. The reason we do this is because we will send out our invitation letters. For those of you that received them last year, you were probably surprised to see a $5 bill. I know I'd be excited to see that because I only receive bills now. So something exciting, check your mail. There could be $5 in it. But no, the reason we want to make sure we have the right address on file is because we will send the invitation letter by mail with the $5 bill. And as Laysha mentioned, that'll be between March and September. It depends on when you finished your survey last year. And then following that, about 2 weeks following us sending those out, you should receive your email. All of these steps just also help provide us with checking to make sure your email still works, because if your email doesn't work or your address has changed, we just want to make sure that we can connect with you. So we will send those survey links by email. It'll be the same kind of situation as last year. When you finish the survey, we will send you that $10 e-gift card. And again, you can reach out to us if you don't receive it. We'll follow up with you as well. And then in 2020, we will have the third and final survey. And then just one note of excitement for probably me and everybody else is that the survey will be shorter. We know that the first one was long. It's because we have to ask all those demographic information or questions. And like we asked, I think, a 5-year employment history. It'll be much shorter. It'll be just the most recent within the last 12 months. And then just again to point out that it is very important to fill it out as completely as possible. As I mentioned earlier, we can help you complete it. We understand that you might have limited access to internet because of the pandemic, or maybe you're in one of those families that you had to give your device up to somebody else so they can go to school or work. So if you let us know that you need help filling it out, we can find a time to do it over the phone with you. Of course, we don't have the manpower to do 682 surveys. So if you can do it on your own, great. If not, we have no problem helping. Yeah. Anything I'm missing here? I think.
No, I think that's it.
Okay. And for questions.
Yeah, so if you guys have any questions about the survey or about the data that we presented, or any suggestions about how we look at the data going forward, or anything that you would like us to prepare and share with certification bodies or employers or the states or anything like that. So I think Matt is going to read the questions.
Yes, thanks guys. That was really great. So yeah, we have a few questions. I'll just go from kind of chronologically where we were in these in the webinar. So for the near the beginning, you had a graph that was why people sought out getting into CPS, and you had 11% other. Do you have any examples of what that 11% might have answered?
Yeah, so the quotes that I had following, I believe I actually pulled from the other category, but a lot of the others that we experienced were people just telling their story of how they got involved in peer support. And so a lot of people, we actually kind of gone back, but some of that could probably be categorized in other categories. We also had a few people that said all of the above. I know we were cruel and asked you to only choose one, but people were like, nope, all of the above. These are all the reasons.
Great, thanks. And as I'm asking these questions, if more come up, feel free to enter them into the chat and I will try to get to those as well. And then we have, do you guys, either of you have any views on the national peer certification?
Yeah, I think it's been a difficult undertaking so far. My understanding is that there's probably been some difficulties in engaging the appropriate stakeholders in that process. But I don't know, just to be real, in working with a lot of the states that we tried to work with to get the information that we needed to recruit people to this study, I've been working in this field for maybe almost 15 years now, and I have a lot of relationships with the consumer survivor peer community, and with various people in the states. And I did kind of wonder if there's a trend towards kind of outsourcing the certification process to other entities, whether those are, like contractors for the state, and then it's sort of maybe becoming divorced from the origins and the people who have been involved in peer support all this time. So, I feel, some concern about retaining the authenticity of peer support, and making sure that's really what people are getting certified to do. I don't really know that much about the national certification. I think one of the issues is that it's certification that people get in a lot of these states allows their employer to bill Medicaid for their time. And that's really a driver, for better or worse, this is America and a lot of things are driven by money. So if you can't bill under the certification that you have, that's going to make it difficult to get it implemented.
Yeah, and just to add to that, I think something that I experienced as I've talked to participants throughout this process is, so if you don't know, Live and Learn, Laysha and I, we're all based in California, and California doesn't even have its own certification. We have peer support roles and everything, but it's very different between the counties, and we're actually working on it now of getting that defined and everything. But I think it's really funny that I've talked to a lot of participants and they've said, oh, we're so, our state's so behind, somewhere like California. And I'm like, oh no, we don't even have one. But yeah, so I don't really know how realistic. I think it would have to be that the states worked together for a national one, because obviously as we're developing the one in California, we learned that we have different situations in California than other states do. For example, I don't like that one quote about the fentanyl deaths and everything. I don't think that's as big of an issue in California as it is other places. So I think that at some point it has to stay specific to states.
Yeah, but right now, we have another project through the Copeland Center's Door to Wellbeing SAMHSA grant, identifying the components of certification in each state. You can check that out on their website. I think you can get it from our website too. But what we learned through that process is that every state has an extremely different process and they're all confusing. So yeah. National would be great for researchers, I think, in a way.
That's a perfect segue into our next question. Do you have any data on which states and cities where the most CPS are employed?
Overall, so in our study, you can see in that map, you can see it on our website too, at peerspecialist.net, where we recruited people from. That doesn't necessarily represent the number of peer specialists in those states, although I'd say it probably is, just in relative terms, where there's more or less. But I think there hasn't really been enough. I think it's really hard to approximate how many peer specialists are in each state, and it changes every year. University of Illinois at Chicago, they have a map on their website on Judith Cook Center that has the total number of certified peer specialists as of 2017, I think, but I don't know that there's been any work to update that.
Thanks.
And I will say, just from Matt, but just to say, from what we've experienced from talking to individuals, that rural areas often obviously lack peer support. Like they don't even have it often. And some people that are in our study have had to go out of their county to get employment for peer support. So.
Thanks. And then do you know if any part-time CPS workers receive benefits? Did you get into any of that?
Yeah, they might. I think the result that we showed was, I think, that they were less likely to overall. But again, all this data is based on statistical averages and doesn't necessarily reflect individual experiences. So I'm sure that there are some part-time workers who receive benefits. Correct me if I'm wrong, Morgan.
No, I don't think we've specifically, as you guys can see, we have a lot of data, and so we're just trying to find the avenues that makes the most sense to really get into it. But I mean, ideally, I mean, the way research works is we could be writing papers on this for the next like 10 years.
And then actually the requirement of our funders at NIDLR is that I believe either 3 to 5 years after the study ends, the data will be made public. So any of you will be free at that point to get into it on your own and have at it.
De-identified, of
just-
course.
Yeah,
Just to-
de-identified, yes.
Couple more questions and then just some broader comments. Will you be using or addressing the veteran identifier in future surveys?
I mean, I would like to know, that's a great question. Like if there's any specific questions that people think that we should be asking the data about that part of the sample, it would be great. I know that that the VA has really been ahead in some ways in hiring peer support specialists, but yeah, I would definitely be interested in that.
Yeah, we had a comment about how the VA has a smaller portion of their percentage are women CPS.
Yeah, so, I mean, I guess that probably maybe reflects the enrollment in the armed forces.
Yeah, I will say that we have discussed asking a little bit more about like how you came to get certified, and I think that we've realized that in the interviews that a lot of people are like, oh no, it was through the VA that I got certified. But also we've also heard that sure you get certified that way, but that the VA is also hard to get employment through, so kind of catch-22 there.
This you might not know, but do you know if there's any like specific CPS training that is done in Spanish or other languages?
I actually don't know.
No,
I don't think that was part of Doors to Wellbeing either.
yeah, that's a really good question. We will look into it.
And then just a few comments as we wrap up. Someone in Pennsylvania just wanted to mention that in order to be to do peer support work, you do have to be certified. But it's very hard to move up because a lot of the supervisor positions require like a 4-year college degree, which can make it hard. And if you guys have any thoughts on that.
Yeah, that's interesting. I didn't realize that. I know that like Pennsylvania was very early in changing their Medicaid billing rules so that peer specialists could be supervised by other peer specialists. But yeah, that's a little concerning that it's not enough to get your peer specialist certification. You also have to have a college degree. And I wonder if they're supporting people who want to advance in getting a degree.
Yeah, or if there was some kind of equivalent of time you've spent as a peer supporter that could count as.
Yeah.
And then I did get some comments in chat that in Texas there are Spanish language certification training. There's one called Hope, via Hope.
Oh, via Hope, yeah.
Yeah. So that pretty much does it. I don't see.
Awesome. Well, thank you guys again for joining us. Oh, go to this slide. Thank you again for joining us. And if you have any questions, whether it's about what we're presenting here today or you know, the next wave of the survey, please feel free to reach us by our email or by phone. You can text or call. And then if you're looking for updates, we don't update it like every day, but like Laysha said, we do have the most recent graphs that we showed here today are up on peerspecialist.net, and in about a week we will have this posted as well. So I think that's the best way to stay in contact with us.
Great. Thanks, guys.
Thank you.